Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Rooya Ayubi. Hey, Rooya.
Hi, Kimberly.
I am so thrilled to have you on the podcast today and for people to hear your story. And just so that they can know who you are, I'm going to go ahead and just read your short bio. So, Rooya Ayubi is a storyteller, life coach, wife, and mother, an immigrant woman who walked across the desert from Afghanistan to Pakistan when she was only 6 years old. Rooya is a survivor of trauma. Because of this, Rooya grew up with a deep sense of unworthiness, which led to a decade of depression. After embarking on a major self healing journey, she came out of it strong and healthy. Her dream and mission now is to guide women who have felt beaten down by the challenges in their lives to reawaken hope, reclaim their power, and begin to live a life of honor. All right, so I am very excited to hear your story. So tell us about you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all, and I'm extremely excited to be here. So my story is basically all of it is right there in that short bio. Uh, it was challenging moving from Afghanistan and going from one country to the next and trying to adjust and trying to, I mean, I feel everyone has an identity crisis, even if they're literally born and raised in the same neighborhood for the rest of their lives. But this was like an identity crisis. I couldn't understand, you know, what I was. I do storytelling. So in one of my stories, I talk about not being American enough, not being Afghan enough, because I'm, Afghan, and then not being Muslim enough, right? You just have this identity crisis, and you want to be accepted, you want to belong. And the challenges that I went through led me to believe that when you learn to accept yourself and you belong to you, you can belong anywhere. And, that's where I am now. And all those challenges that I went through, um, it was extremely difficult to do it on my own. I had wonderful mentors. I had wonderful life coaches. I had, I attended workshops and did a lot of reading, but it was putting it all together into this one package that I needed for myself. If I was there for me at the time, would have been perfect. And so that journey has led me to, be the type of life coach I want to be now and help women, overcome, and eventually other people, men, women, to overcome the challenges in their lives. And for me, it's right, unworthiness, to overcome that unworthiness, regain their self-worth. And for me, what I say is shifting from a life of shame to a life of honor. And I've experienced that with clients that I've worked with and family members who have, received my help, and they're like, I would, I got here. So I'll witness. I'm like, you got there so much faster. And they're like, well, it's because we have you. So I want to be able to share that gift with the rest of the world. And, with all the suffering that's happening in this world, I know that that's needed. And I have to kind of get outside of myself, which I feel like unworthiness is you're trapped inside of you in this darkness because you're so ashamed to show up in the world because you don't feel worthy of being here. So for me, it's always lifting another layer of darkness and showing up. And it's like a bigger step to be like, okay, well, now I'm gonna help you overcome this unworthiness that I believe is the a major cause of suffering in this world.
I think it is a major cause for many, many people, even if they
Yeah.
can't even identify it. They just know there's this mm, just not peace, just this
Yes.
something underneath that doesn't feel quite
Mhm.
right.
Right. That's so true. And people always see unworthiness, as an effect of some problem, but to me, it's the problem. It's the problem because if we felt good inside of ourselves, if we felt worthy of existing, we wouldn't need people to validate us. We wouldn't need power to make us feel like we're important. We wouldn't need different things, different means of trying to be feel important in this world. That's what this world is about right now. Everyone's trying to gain power of some sort so they can feel important, or control certain groups or people or whatever. And it's you don't need to do any of that. You don't need validations from anyone. You can just be.
Yeah, exactly. So, you talked about moving from Afghanistan to Pakistan, and then where do you live now?
So we moved to Virginia. That's where I learned English.
Uh-huh.
And I'm so grateful because the ESL classes, which is English as a second language, was so tiny. And we had one-on-one with our teacher. And then of course, there wasn't a lot of Afghans that were speaking Farsi. They were like probably born and raised there. So it was really challenging for me to be able to communicate. So I was like, I have to learn how to speak, because I actually learned how to read. At a much older age. It was a struggle for me, maybe because of the moving and everything. And so once I learned how to read and write in Farsi, I was so excited. Then we come to the US and I have to start from scratch. So it's devastating, but so grateful because the challenge actually helped me learn English a lot faster and easier. And then by the time I came to California, which is where I am right now, I was, already excelling in all my classes.
Got it. So you were a child even when you came to United States?
Yeah, so I came to Virginia when I was 9.
Okay.
And that's when I had to be the translator, I had to be the babysitter, I had to be the one that made the phone calls and read letters that I had no idea, words that I've never heard of, and try to make my father understand what the letter was trying to tell him. It was really, really challenging. Uh, Not only did I have an identity crisis because I was moving from one place to the next, but I didn't get to enjoy my childhood. I was parentified at a very young age. I became my parents' parent, and I became my siblings' parent. So there was no room for to discover who I was and what I wanted to do and what made Roya happy, and what my purpose might be. It was just, and that's why I fell into that depression, because I had these beautiful boys, I had 3 boys, and they were just, there's a little short poem that I wrote, which is, I lived in darkness for so many years, and then I have these 3 beautiful boys with bright eyes just looking at me and just like in awe, and I can't seem to want to be seen because I don't feel important enough. And so that made me go into depression. And then I didn't know who Roya was without her family, and didn't know how to be a parent to these beautiful children. So I just felt lost, and and so I went inwards.
Wow. So I want to go a little bit back to the beginning so that we can understand why this shifting around, moving around was difficult. So, because not everybody understands all the culture and everything.
Right.
So, Afghanistan to Pakistan.
Hmm.
So, what are the cultural rules, language in Afghanistan compared to Pakistan? And why was it hard to shift from one to the other? Like, tell me about those two different cultures.
Right. So in a lot of ways, of course, the cultures are similar. The religion, most people who practice Islam, and I mean, most people in Afghanistan practice Islam. Most people in Pakistan practice Islam. So those were the same. The language was different. I had to relearn a new language. There are a lot of similarities, so it was a little easier, but I was too scared to ever speak the language. So I was able to understand, but I wouldn't speak it. And where we live, there was a second language which is actually spoken in Afghanistan as well, which is Pashto. And I didn't even try to learn that, even though it's from my country, because it was actually more different than Urdu, which is the main language that's spoken in Pakistan. And then, of course, like I grew up with family, very close relatives. I could walk to my grandma's house. I could walk to my aunt's house. Everybody knew me in the neighborhood. Here, we moved twice, I think, or 3 times, and I never really got to know the neighbors. And as soon as I got to know my neighbors, or one of them, two of them. It was we transitioning to the next, and then we lived there for 3 years, and then we moved to the US. So I didn't have time to really assimilate into this new culture and for me to kind of identify who I am in this new culture. And so that was the challenge. That was the difference. Yeah.
And why the moving? Was it your parents' profession or career?
No, actually, they were refugees. So we were all refugees, obviously, and we first lived with some family, and then my father worked really hard and got us out of there. Then we moved in with another family, and they had like the upstairs floor, and we had the downstairs floor. And then, of course, he kept working hard, and my uncle also used to help because he was living in Virginia. And so he was able to afford to move into his our own place basically. And so that was one of the main reasons why we had to move around because it was just, I mean, it was a good thing because we could afford better and, bigger places. But for a child, it was very challenging. And we didn't go to the Pakistani school because you had to pay, and my parents couldn't afford it. So that made it even more challenging to assimilate into the culture because I'm not able to get the type of education and learn the language with them as like I did in the US. So I did go to school, but it was a school for refugees, Afghani schools for refugees, and I was learning my own language, and not really learning the language in Pakistan. And I
Um,
think that has a lot to do with assimilating into a culture. When you don't know the language, how are you going to communicate with people?
exactly. So
Yeah.
when you were in these schools for refugees, like in Pakistan, um, did it cause, I don't know, do you think that the children in those schools behaved differently because of what they were going through? Because all of them were in the same situation you were.
Hmm. Hmm. Behave differently as opposed to the other kids in Pakistan or other kids that I've met here, or what do you mean by
Yeah, other
behave?
kids is who are just in, they're with their family, they're stable, they're going
Mhm.
to whatever public school is there, and just life as normal. But was there a little bit of unrest, or was there any different feelings, do you think? Or
I guess I can't say that I could compare it because I'm thinking back right now and I'm like, how did I not? Maybe we lived in areas where there are a lot of refugees, so it was more like we just moved from Afghanistan to like a little town that was Afghanistan, you know?
Mhm.
There wasn't a lot we didn't live in an area where people were very, well off for me to make friends with people who were well educated, for me to be able to tell the difference. And I actually don't remember having a lot of friends who were from Pakistan. In fact, I don't know if I remember any kids except for my neighbor's kids, and that's it. And I don't even know if they were from Pakistan or if they were from Afghanistan. So, um, I mean, I could compare it to where, because my first year of school was in Afghanistan, and um, to be honest with you, I didn't see much difference. I think we left at a good time when it wasn't so scary.
Mhm.
Even though I mean, it was scary because the Russians had come over and they had taken over. But I mean, I had seen people, who had died, but to actively watch people die and actively hear bombs, we actually were fortunate to escape that aspect of war from in Afghanistan. So I think we were probably better off than the kids much after us, unfortunately. And
Excellent.
fortunately.
And then when you came to United States, you know, you dress differently, you look a little bit different than your typical white, black, Hispanic kid in the
Hmm.
school. So when you said you were 9 when you came over, so when you came over, were you accepted? Like the kid said, "Oh, who's this nice, new, interesting person?" Or did you feel like ostracized, like, "Oh, she's real different." Like what was your experience?
So this was my part of the story that I was telling you about, as because I do storytelling, and I do it in the present tense, through Vicky De La Joyo's work, and she does storytelling, and I'm so grateful to have met her because she's taught me this type of storytelling. And one of the stories is that my first day of school, all the kids ask me, because they're curious. I'm a new kid, and they're asking me, do you know English? And I just keep shaking my head and I say no because I know what the word no means. And then even though I can't really understand, I can tell from the tone of their voice that they're saying, well, then how can you say no? And then I'm frustrated because I'm thinking, obviously I'm going to know no and yes, it's simple, but I can't communicate it. So, so that's like my frustration as a 9-year-old girl. Uh, But where I live, which is Alexandria, it was pretty diverse. There were some Afghans, not a lot, but there were some Afghans, so I didn't feel completely out of place, even though they weren't speaking my language in the beginning, and then later I met some that were. And so it didn't, I actually really enjoyed living in Virginia. My teachers were amazing. I had actually one of my main ESL teachers, his name was Mr. Dizarn, and his wife actually was Afghan. And he had learned how to speak Farsi. So for my mom and for us and my parents, they were just amazed, like, oh my goodness, this American man knows how to speak Farsi. And so he was so sweet. When he was doing the teacher parent conference, he would speak in Farsi with them and communicate with them and tell them, how my progress was and so forth. So it was actually really nice living in Virginia. I was really upset that we had to move to California because it actually became more challenging coming to California than it was growing up in Virginia.
How so?
So, like I was saying, my ESL class was so small, right? And so I got a lot of one-on-one attention and I was able to learn how to read really fast, read and write. When I came to California, the ESL classes were huge. There were like so many kids there, and the teacher didn't have the opportunity to be able to really focus on each child. And the funny thing is I insisted that they put me in an ESL class because they had originally put me in a regular class because based on my test scores, and I didn't realize that. And so I insisted because that's what I knew, right? You lean on what you know and
Mhm.
what's comfortable. And so they put me in ESL class, and the teacher just like one day was like, Roya, you don't belong in this class. I said, why? She said, because you know everything.
Mhm.
There's no reason for you to be here. And so, but then later, as I went into other, like in high school and everything, I realized these kids that had taken ESL classes in California still struggled to read and write, still struggled to communicate. They were just not doing as well as I was. And then people's focus in California was a lot more different. It wasn't focused on everyone, not just the Afghan kids. It wasn't focused on education. It was like looking the greatest, looking, and being popular and all these things. I'm sure that had to do with my age as well as you get older. And at the same time, I felt like that was more of a thing, even in fourth grade, which is when I moved to California. Everybody was about style and not much about education.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And how did that play out as far as, your traditional dress and well, in California there's everything. I know that
I know.
they do have dress
By the way,
codes,
it's a good thing.
some people still try to come to school and skirt under the dress code with all sorts of wild things.
So I didn't have to worry about the hijab, which is my scarf, because I wasn't wearing it. I didn't wear it until I went into college. So that was not a problem. I Everything else was pretty my parents had rules. I wasn't allowed to wear shorts. And I wasn't allowed to wear like sleeveless shirts, and it had to be everything had to be long
Mhm.
and covered. So no cleavage, obviously. But beyond that, I could dress whatever way I wanted to. So that was not a problem for me. I was fine. And again, growing up in Fremont, and there's a area in Fremont that's called Little Cobble. and Kabul is the capital of Afghanistan. So you didn't feel out of place at all. But for me, that was the actual challenging part, was that you would think that I would feel more accepted in an environment like that, but I was the exact opposite because I left Afghanistan at a certain time. I didn't grow up with a lot of Afghans, not even cousins, whereas these kids grew up with cousins and family members, and they had come later or earlier. And so when I came to, when I was introduced to them, and I was so excited because I was like, oh, I'm going to be accepted finally, and I'll belong. I realized, oh my goodness, their jokes are different. Their understanding of, our culture is different. Uh, the way they express themselves is different. And at that moment, I just shut down. That's when I became the quiet, smart Roya, because if I was so afraid to open my mouth, because I felt like if I did, I would be seen as an imposter amongst the Afghans, and then they would reject me. So that was the beginning of me just shutting down and not being myself because of the fear of, rejection and not being accepted.
Yeah. So you kind of the feeling of an outsider, it sounds like.
Yes, yes, yes.
Because I mean, you were born in Afghanistan, but when you came here, you become American.
Right.
You are
That's what it
American.
was. They were like, "Oh, you're so Americanized, you're so this," and they kind of labeled me too. So I was just like, "Oh, I must be different because that's what they're saying about me."
Mhm.
So that
So
was challenging.
when did the you said it a little bit during your story, but when did that realization hit you? You said like when you had kids, but when did the realization hit you so hard that you went into the depression? And what do you think led to that?
Well, what led to the depression is when I became a mother of three children. Because for me, I see abundance and self-worth hand in hand. So if you lack self-worth, receiving abundance becomes a lot harder. And so based on your self-worth, you can receive more or less abundance. For me, I think was three kids was like, this is too much abundance, and that was like the beginning of me shutting down because I didn't know how to be this amazing mother that they needed. I didn't feel worthy of that. And then I knew I couldn't keep being the kind of person that my family needed because now I was a mother of three children. I had my husband and I had to be this different person. I didn't know how to be that different person because I was so detached from who I was. And then what led to my healing journey was when I was listening to a passage of the Quran, we believe is the word of God, and it's what it said was that what he said was that um, humanity has been created to be honored, that mankind is honored, and this is repeated over and over in the Quran, and so. And I remember seeing a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. And I'll try to circle back to why that is later with the work that I ended up doing. And that was that basically that was like what stirred inside of me to get me to be like, I need to reach out and get help. And so I reached out to Sharon Strand Ellis, and she wrote the book, Taking the War Out of Our Words. I ended up connecting with Vicky. Storytelling became a way of therapy for me. Sharon was helping with communicating with my children and my husband and my family members. And then of course that helped me go on other paths and seek other help, other means of help. And then I bumped into Dr. Martinez, and he says that shame is like one of the major causes of effects of childhood trauma. And so, and the way to cure that trauma, that shame, which would also, indirectly heal the trauma, is the healing field is honor. And so that's when I realized, oh my goodness, when I heard the word honor, that's why I was able to, have this courage to get up and seek help because it was the antidote. That's what all I needed was honor. And so now what I do is through his work, I consistently try to honor people because he says that whether you honor someone or someone honors you, it's still healing for both people. And so just by seeing people, acknowledging them, taking time to talk to them, ask them how they're doing, I know that I am curing them and I'm also curing myself. And so that was the beginning of my healing journey, was this word honor. And my work involves the idea that when shame triggers, when you experience shame at a young age, it leaves implicit shame memories in your body. And it's implicit because you don't have language to be able to recount it,
Mhm.
through language. And then those are what basically paralyzes you into not feeling, because the feeling is so detrimental to the body that it feels safer not to feel at all. And that's why you have like hard-hearted people. That's why you have people having a hard time being vulnerable and showing emotion,
Mhm.
because they're afraid of shame. And then of course, our cultures all over our society has become a shame-based society where we think we can actually help people by shaming them. Or, like with Sharon's work, she believes we've been using the rules of war for communication, which takes me back to the fact that if when you are shamed at a young age, you go into this defense mode. So the defense mode leads you to having the rules of war for communication. And so what do? You become defensive, you hide information, you don't really communicate effectively with people because you're too afraid of being hurt. And then we also use that language to shame each other, right? So if somebody says, I really like ice cream, and somebody, if they don't agree with you, they might say it with a tone of voice like, oh, you like ice cream? That's a shaming tone of voice, saying it in that way. It's like, you must be really like whatever, overweight. So many messages can come to you. You must be stupid for liking ice cream, whatever. So so this way, with the word honor and honoring, you're consistently healing people. And so I want people to understand that shame is the root, like the effect of trauma. It leads to feeling unworthy because you don't have the tools and resources to be able to defend yourself, not even the tool of language. And so it leaves you feeling unworthy. It leaves you feeling powerless. Why do we have this power epidemic? People are trying to seek power all the time. They're trying to seek power at work, power over their spouses, power over their children, power over the world. It's because we've grown up feeling powerless, feeling unworthy. And so we're trying to now fill this void with something that we can't fill it with but our own selves.
Exactly. Now, you said this word a lot, but every time I hear you say the word, I can physically feel it.
Mm,
Honor.
yes.
What is it? What is the meaning to you when you hear the word honor?
Uh, to me, the word honor just means being seen without having to do anything. Just by existence, you're seen. That's honor to me. And that's what I believe the Quran is teaching us, that you're honored just because you exist. You don't have to be speaking, you don't have to be walking, you don't have to be, having degrees of this, and you don't have to be doing anything. You just are, and you're honored for that, and you're seen for it, and you're valued for it.
Oh, and tell me, what was the passage again, that sentence you quoted?
That I have honored humankind, or I have honored humanity.
Mm, beautiful.
Yes.
Very,
Yeah.
very beautiful. Because, I mean, isn't that what everyone wants, to be acknowledged, seen,
Yeah.
loved for just who you are, just because you exist, for no other
Right.
reason.
Yes.
You exist, therefore you're loved, you're honored, you're acknowledged, you're wanted, yeah.
Without having to do things to make you feel like, okay, well, now I can exist, right?
Mhm.
And that's the pain when you do so much and then people don't see you. still,
Mhm.
that it's just you feel even more empty because of the fact that you try to prove your existence, you try to prove your worthiness. Like, I deserve to be here.
Mhm.
But you deserve to be here because you were born. You're a miracle in one in 400 trillion, I believe they say. That out of the you're a possibility out of one out of 400 trillion. So how could you not be worthy? How could you not be important and worthy of existing?
Mhm. So I'm in healthcare, and a lot of times, I call them international people come in to get
Mhm.
their eyes checked, and I don't know their language, but a lot of times they do have someone like you, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, and they're in and they are translating for the whole family. And I'm always so grateful and thankful that they're there and that they're doing that. And I think, oh my goodness, they're doing this all the time, everywhere, not just here. So
Mhm.
if you were going to give a word, if you could talk to those kids right now who are in your situation, who are doing this lovely thing, but maybe feeling, I don't know, frustrated or feeling like they didn't have to do this, but but they love their family, they're doing it. What word would you tell them? What encouragement would you say to them?
It's for me, what I would say is this is what's going to make you resilient. This is what's going to make you who you are. This is going to give you so many tools. I mean, competence, confidence, all the things that other kids, which I see my siblings struggling with, lack because they didn't have that opportunity. I know it sucks. I know it sucks that you're put in that position where you have to do that. But if you can not be resentful growing up and just appreciate it as a gift, you can actually and be able to let go and draw boundaries because part of the reason why I struggled was my family members were always in need of me. They became so dependent on me. I had to tell my father, you know English well enough now, you can do this. And it was scary for him, but now he makes all his phone calls himself. He goes to all his appointments on his own. Same thing with my mom. So if you cannot be resentful, which I spent many years being resenting my parents, many years, and it made things even worse
Hmm.
and it made it grow, healing even more challenging. um so yeah, if you can drop the resentment and just see it as a gift, you're just going to make you a better person, and you're going to be grateful for that, for those for that challenging life growing up.
Right, which leads me to talk about forgiveness. Where is forgiveness in that whole healing that you did?
Wow, that's a great question, Kimberly. I'm finding myself going through that process consistently. I feel like I've forgiven people and I've moved on, and then I find, they'll do something that will break my heart, and then I will realize, oh my goodness, I don't forgive them because I'm remembering everything that they've done to me. So I think where I am in my journey in forgiveness is that there is a part of me that still feels like I have to watch over loved ones and family members. And there's this concern that I have in the back of my mind, whether I'm actively helping them or just the concerns in the back of my mind. It's it it it's not letting go. And so when they do something that hurt me, it gets rekindled. That resentment gets rekindled, and then I find myself going back to this place like, whoa, I need to forgive this person. How do I do it? So I think for me, forgiveness is not only forgiving the people that have hurt you, but doing the internal work to be able to let go of those, they say the untethered soul, all the strings, so that it's no longer binding you, attaching you to these people, so that when they do something, it doesn't affect you inwards. You could see it as a reflection of who they are, and that's it.
Mhm.
And so for me, forgiveness is still it's just ongoing journey, but I think I'm in a much better place now than I was even a few weeks ago. And just always reminds me that I need more work inside.
Yeah, we all need that. Sure. So, talk about how you're working with people, like in the work you're doing with people and what that looks like and who do you work with?
Well, I feel like I was a life coach ever since I was a little girl because I've always given advice. I've always guided people. So I feel like all my clients have been my family members, friends, and coworkers and so forth. And at the same time, I've worked with some like this one specific lovely lady in India who was like when I started first speaking with her, I could tell that she was where I was. Same, very similar scenario, grew up sacrificing her entire life, to her parents and siblings and them just turning around and just stabbing her left and right in the heart. And it makes you realize how much, and that's why it's so important for me to do the work. That my work is definitely beneficial and it's something that people need because working with her just within a few weeks, it went from I can't get out of my room, I can't get out of bed, I can't face people outside, I can't deal with my family. I'm having a hard time raising my children. She was, I'm a homeschooler, she was a homeschooler. How do I teach these kids? And I've taken this big major responsibility, kind of like I'm ruining their lives to like, this beautiful, I mean, she's so beautiful already, but her smile, I didn't even know how beautiful her smile was. Consistent smiling. She went from being stuck in this, with her mom her relationship with her mom was very challenging and it was pulling her down even more to she had this dream of moving on to this other city in India that was beautiful, was in nature. And I, even me, when I was working with her in the beginning, I was like, oh, this will take a couple of years probably, but I know she can do it. And within a few months, she was already moved out and she was already living this new life that she had just spoken about. And it seemed like it was impossible and doing the things that she wants to do for her kids and being a better mother and a better homeschooler and even fixing her relationship with her mother, healing the relationship with her mother and her siblings. So it's so rewarding to see that, you know to know that your work had that great of an impact. Of course, she did so much of the work. I mean, you have to be willing to do the work, right? I can give you all the tools you want, but if you're not willing to do the work, you're not going to go anywhere. And that's what I want to do. I just want to have people have access to those tools. And if they're willing, do the work and shift from that life of shame to the life of honor.
So, how would people know that they would be a good candidate to work with you? Like, is it just people who are going through depression, or how would they know to seek your advice?
I mean, to me, the tools I so through Vicky, I've learned some tools of Qigong, which is amazing and it's so helpful because I feel that because you have all these implicit memories in your body's kind of taking control. And so to how do you take back control? Qigong is one of those ways. Uh, I do I've learned a lot of techniques through Dr. Martinez. I do a lot of meditation exercises, visualization. I have this thing which is Islamic, which is what's called Zhikr, which means remembrance. So it's kind of like a type of affirmation. All these tools, and you'd be surprised. Everybody could always better themselves. So for me, anyone is a candidate. And at the same time, if you're really struggling in life and you just want somebody to guide you through that darkness. I feel like, I see it as you're in this darkness and then somebody just turns on a light here and there for you. And then you're able to take a couple of steps forward and forward until you're ready to completely come out. That would be ideal candidates, even if you're in the deepest darkness, as long as you're willing to get out of it, even if it takes tiny, tiny, tiny steps, I'm willing to work with you.
All right, thank you. So if people wanted to connect with you, at this point, I'd like you to tell them, if you have a website or how to connect with you and, what services you have available.
So I do have a website and it's called clearvisionhealing.com. And Vicky helped me come up with this, which it has to do with my name. Again, going back to my name. My name is Clear Vision. So it's just clear vision healing. And to me, healing has to do with seeing a better version of yourself, right? Visualizing who you're meant to be. So I just feel like it's just wonderful that that it all is connected. This name that I grew up loving, it's all connected to who I am. And so it's clearvisionhealing.com. My email is roya@clearvisionhealing.com. And I am on Instagram, Strangers Path, because I believe like we're all strangers, even to ourselves, unfortunately. So I do have a YouTube account that I'm not very active on, but I'm hoping to. So if you just look up my name, you can find me, even if you type in Clear Vision or Clear Vision Healing, it should pop up. So,
Well, thank you so much. So now I have a personal question. What gives
mhm.
you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
You know, honestly, just being able to see people and honor people. I work for an airline industry, and one of the reasons why I get up, and get ready and go to work is because I get to meet amazing people, and maybe I'll get to see them for only a split second, but to me, they're an entire universe. And if I can interact with them and be honored by their presence, even for a moment, that gives me joy, brings me healing, that makes me happy.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and being very vulnerable with your story because I kind of asked you some hard questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kimberly. It's wonderful, wonderful being able to. We had such an amazing conversation. It was so easy to speak to you. And again, it was an honor, true honor to be here in your presence and have this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And so I have one last question before we complete. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
I guess I'm going to go back to the same thing. If you can just see people and honor them and acknowledge them, you're healing your own trauma and you're healing everyone else's trauma along the way. What, even if it's your own, if you can, I mean, at home, it's even more important. Your children, your husband, your significant other, your family members, all these people. And then, of course, at work, you're consistently healing yourself and others and when you're out in the world.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Roya.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you again soon.